Hello and welcome to LDS Loudmouth. I'm Kim.
I'm Jane.
And this is where we are learning to speak up
And reach out.
making our world a better place.
Because each of us is a part of it.
Welcome back, and today's episode is Families Can Be Together Forever Except Yours. What we're going to be talking about today is how does LDS doctrine affect people in the church whose families don't fit the mold? Also, how does this affect those trying to live the doctrine within their own families to help their families, quote, make it into the celestial kingdom? And thirdly, we're also going to be talking about those at peace with their families as they are and reject the doctrine of traditional sealed families and accept that God is a kind and loving God. How does the doctrine reflect in how other members treat them?
That's a lot of stuff.
That is a lot of stuff. So Jane and I both have families that don't fit the mold. And Jane is going to talk about her personal experiences.
Now, before I get started, I want to explain to you what the mold is. We're not talking about the green or brown stuff or black stuff that's in your walls. We're talking about the traditional family mold. The one husband, one salary earner, the wife stays home and takes care of the children, the 3.5 kids, whatever. That's the mold we're talking about.
The nuclear family.
The nuclear family as opposed to...
What? Oh, yeah, I was calling it the atomic family.
As opposed to the atomic family. Okay, we're going to talk about this. Okay, I was raised in a traditional Mormon family. My dad worked outside the home. My mom worked inside the home. The second of 6 kids. Mom did a lot of work. I went to BYU. I took a long time to graduate, but while I was there, I dated a little bit here and there, but nothing really serious. When I finally graduated, I moved to New Jersey and started working. I met a very nice, very recent convert to the church, and 2 years later, we got married in the temple. While he was in school, I worked. Then we went off for him to get a master's degree, and I worked there in California. When he announced, after working for 2 years after his first master's, he announced that he wanted to get a PhD. So we moved to Texas, where I said, if you want to get a PhD, I want to be a stay-home mom, because that's what we had discussed when we were getting engaged. So in Texas, I was a stay-home mom, and I homeschooled my son that we had in California. And in Texas, I had 2 more kids. Then we moved back to New Jersey for his PhD, and I went back to work. And eventually I ended up homeschooling my younger 2 kids through junior high and high school. Now, since my husband was a recent convert, I tried to teach him how to be the leader in the home, as we have been taught. But he never really caught on. He resented me bossing him around. I guess I didn't have a good teaching style back then.
Oops.
I resented him for not living up to what he had promised when we got engaged and had said he wanted, which was me to stay home with the kids and for him to earn all the money. He stopped going to church when our youngest was 8 for various reasons. He often accused me after that of wanting to divorce him because he wasn't going to church anymore. Whenever we had an argument, he goes, "Oh, you're going to divorce me now, huh?"
Oh, geez.
That made me mad because I felt like he thought that the only reason I'd married him was because he was a member and not because of any of his redeeming qualities. The nice thing during that time, though, was that he never pressured me to stop going to church. In fact, he used to tell me to go get churched up because it made me a nicer person. Also, if I was still paying tithing, which I was, the church would be obligated to help us out if we needed it, and he liked that. Now, when he stopped going to church, a few people would ask me where he was and how he was and why he wasn't coming anymore. My standard answer was, well, go ask him. I wasn't going to tell people his answers. Our home teachers would still come by, and he would be pleasant, and they were nice. And as time went on, people just accepted the fact that I was a single member marriage family. And it really helped that I was in a small branch that was filled with more divorced and never married women with children than the traditional Mormon family. We also had a lot of transient families, young marrieds there to get a degree from NYU, so that there were a lot of little young married families with tiny children. As my kids grew into their teenage years, they'd have times when they didn't want to go to church. So instead of just letting them choose and just giving up on them, I told them that they had one active parent and one inactive parent, so they could skip half of their meetings, but never 2 in a row, unless they were sick, of course. It worked out pretty well. My son had issues as a teenager, but he went on a mission, and then he came back and got married in the temple when he was in college. Currently, he has 3 kids, my grandkids, and he is living the nuclear family tradition of him working with his wife at home with the kids and homeschooling.
Wow.
I divorced my husband when my kids were mostly adults. The youngest was 17. Now, it had nothing to do with the fact that he wasn't going to church anymore. It had to do with a lot of other things, which we will not go into here. My new ward where I moved was a mix of various types of families. Again, some fully intact, some divorced, some never married with varying amounts of children. They accepted me and my two youngest right away, and I never felt looked down on because I was divorced. My youngest child stopped going to church when they entered college and has since met and is currently living with a wonderful other non-binary LGBT person and a roommate, and I love them both. My middle child, after they came out, stayed in the church, went on a mission, but has since formally left the church. There are a few members of the ward who treat my kids, on the rare occasion that they come with me, usually to potluck dinners or holiday dinners, as regular friends and people and make them feel welcome without being pushy. Then there are others who come up to me when I'm all by myself and compliment me on being so strong and still loving them, even though they are no longer in the church. I just give them a stare and tell them that I'm proud of my kids for choosing to leave an institution that was not good for them, and that I'm their mother and I will always love them no matter what. And if I had to choose between the church and my kids, I would pick my kids every time. That usually shuts them up. There's one more way that I don't fit in. At this point, I consider myself a nuanced Mormon. Over the years since my kids came out, I've been learning more about church history, listening to podcasts that are inclusive or that bring up complicated topics in the LDS traditions, reading books that explain historical spirituality and other aspects of religion, ours and others. And I have decided for me what I will and will not believe or live up to as a member of the church. Because of this, I sometimes feel like an imposter. I feel like I'm pretending to be a true blue Mormon, but as an extrovert in church settings, I do enjoy making comments in classes where I can to bring up alternate interpretations of scriptures, family dynamics, and church teachings so that others will know that it's okay to feel and believe differently. Well, that's me, married in the temple, divorced, mother to a son with a wife and family, a non-member adult child who still lives with me, and an adult child who lives with their life partner and another friend who I am only too happy to have as additional members of my family.
Thank you so much, Jane. That was great. Like, I know the story, but everyone else doesn't, so thanks for that. For me, the things that brought me to where I am and where I don't fit the mold is my originally dating outside the church. I grew up in California and like there was not a lot of selection when it came to Mormon boys.
Nope.
And I remember growing up, my mom had a perpetually single friend who never found somebody. She always said about her friend, who I adored and loved, I called her my aunt, even though like later I realized there is no blood relation, and I figured that out a little late.
She was a member of your family.
She was a member of my family. We went to go see her, and she was an artist, and she was super cool, and I loved her.
She does sound super cool.
Oh yeah, she was what made me want to do art. Anyway, my mom said that it would have been better to be married to a non-member than not at all. That kind of stuck. I never fit in with other Mormons, and even less so once I returned from my mission and went to the YSA ward, also nicely dubbed the meat market.
Most of them are.
Oh God, it's so bad. And so I remember coming back and going to the YSA ward with my two younger brothers, who I will call Clark and Alan. So Clark and Alan went to church with me. I was living at home with them, and I would hear my brothers judge other girls by their looks, and it just didn't feel right to me because of their entitlement, because they were returned missionaries.
Ew.
It was pretty gross. I would just sit there and be like, so are other boys thinking of me the same way? I'm like, if that's the case, yeah, no thanks. I would end up going out with my friends. I was the only Mormon in my friends group, like close friends. And so I would be the designated driver for going out and taking them to the bar. And I'd babysit. Everyone would get drunk. They're like, Kim's the best because she doesn't need to get drunk so we can all have fun. Yay!
There are advantages to being the designated driver.
Oh, for sure. They loved hanging out with me. So that was kind of where I met my husband.
You actually met him in a bar?
I did. I met him in a bar.
I did not know that. Okay. Good for you.
My husband's name is Robin, and I remember being at the bar. He came up to me, and it was on Halloween. in a college town.
Oh, wow.
So we were all dressed up. I was in my little outfit where I was a escapee from Bellevue Mental Hospital.
Okay.
And my husband was a punk rock kid, and I thought his guy liner was so hot back in 2005, you know. He talked to me and we kind of hit it off. I broke my bar rule and I gave him my phone number. He texted me the very next day and I was like, oh man, this guy must like me because he broke the cardinal rule.
Yes.
Yeah, for like the 3-day rule. So you don't so you're not some weirdo. I'm like, okay, fine. We'll go with this. We ended up dating for a year. And then he proposed. I ended up giving him a tentative yes. We had made arrangements where he would take me to the Fresno temple to go and have a session while he sat out in the outside. And then I would get my answer. And that was like a really big deal.
Honestly, that makes me know that he's a keeper for you to do that.
And my husband is agnostic, that kind of like is on the side of like atheism, you know? So like,
yes. It's
like, I don't care enough, but if I do, I really think there isn't anything kind of a deal.
Right.
When I went in, I got my answer and it was just kind of like, okay. I'm like, okay. And I ran outside and I told him. And I was really happy because it was a 2-hour drive. And if it was a no, it would have been a really uncomfortable drive home. and he told me, he was like, that was the one time in my entire life I've ever prayed. And he has never prayed since.
Well, his prayer was answered, so why did he need to after that?
It's true. 8 months later, we ended up getting married. Obviously not in the temple. We were married by my family ward bishop, and it was great and it was beautiful. But as the marriage progressed, I started to have things come up where it was like, what ifs in my mind. What if me being married to him, not in the temple, means that we're not going to be together forever, you know? And I would have all of these things run through my mind. And it really was very difficult for like right before we started having children. I really had to think hard to kind of get over that and work myself through that because I loved my husband. I wasn't going to change him. We had talked an awful lot while we were engaged about like what was important to both of us. Me wanting to raise the kids in the church and also pay tithing because it was my money too.
Yes. When
he was going to be the breadwinner. And he was like totally cool with that. Why wouldn't I want to have my kids be raised in the church was his thought. If it made you a good person, you know, like I want my kids to be good people. And if that's what made you a good person, I'm okay with that.
Like I said, this guy's a keeper.
And I also felt really bad for the fact that there was a small portion of me that did want him to eventually join the church. And I asked him, I'm like, are you okay with that? I don't want you to change. And that's a big deal. And he's like, no, that's fine. You know, like, I know you love me for who I am, regardless.
Right.
And so we were able to kind of work that out. And I was able to kind of overcome those thoughts. And I am a fierce protector when it comes to people moving in on my husband, when it comes to pushing religion on him. I don't think he realizes how protective I am.
It's because you do it effectively.
But I really am. I am like, we've had missionaries over and I'm like, hey, my husband's not interested. Don't even try. If you do try, we might have to have you leave. And my husband has like been really great about that. After we had children, he would come with me to church. We have 3 kids. So once we had the kids, he would come with me to church to kid wrangle.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah. So like for the first hour, it was pretty hard because when you have small kids, they're everywhere.
How well I know. Yep.
He helped me to like just be there in kid wrangle. He didn't give a crust about like any of the things that were going on. Although sometimes I would be on my phone because it's really hard to listen sometimes with the ADHD.
Yes.
And then he would like look at me as like, you're supposed to be listening. I'm like, excuse me. But most of the time it was pretty good. When the kids got old enough where I didn't really need a kid wrangler, he stopped coming. So when he stopped coming for wrangling kids for the first hour, I did get a few reactions from other ward members who noticed.
So what did you say to him?
Well, like, there was different reactions, though, because, like, the women really didn't say much. They were just like, oh, he's not coming anymore. I'm like, yeah, well, he's just really not interested and the kids are fine. They knew why he was there. The men really thought that there was some sort of interest there and continued to really push and, like, explaining to them that my husband was being a good husband and helping me with the children never really clicked in their minds. Even though for second and at the time third hour, he never attended any of the classes. He sat outside in the hall. He sat in the car. You know, he sat in the hall when it was like time for somebody to change a diaper or something like that, because, you know, they just couldn't do it. Or he would just watch the baby and I would be baby free, which was fabulous.
Yes. Yeah.
That was helpful, but no one really none of the dudes in the ward figure that out, including the bishop and including the priesthood quorum leader and all of these other people. And I'm just like, yeah, not interested. Oh, well, don't worry about it. He'll come. What?
Clueless.
Totally clueless. My bishop is a doll.
Oh, he is. He's my bishop too, and I love him.
Yes. Our bishop is a doll. And I couldn't ask for a more sweet man.
Yes.
An understanding person to be our bishop. So that said, there are a few things that have happened in my own personal experience with our bishop. I give him grace because I don't think he really is understanding of where I'm coming from.
Yes, this definitely falls into the category of how they treat you because you're not a married in the temple family.
I'm not married in the temple family. And so I remember a couple years ago, at this point, I went in for a tithing settlement interview. And usually I get kind of chatty in the interviews, you know.
You chatty? Never.
Oh, no, never. And so, like, a lot of the time we go through a tithing settlement interview, and, like, I am lucky in two aspects whereas my husband and I are, like, don't have an income currently because he's, like, doing, and it has been for a long time, doing a business, and we've been living off of our means that we have built up. We're luckily very well off. And
you worked hard for that.
And we worked hard for that, yeah. And got very lucky. And secondly, I can say I have a full tithe in the second part because I don't make the money.
You don't?
So...
Zero income, zero tithing.
Zero income, zero tithing. So I am a full tithe payer and I have two loopholes to prove it.
Yes.
And so during the tithing settlement interview, I really got this, like, assumption of pity from the bishop.
Aww.
It, like...
I just made a pity noise. Aw.
It's okay. Because, like, he, of course, he was asking me what happened to my husband. I thought he was interested. I'm like, no. You know, and I had to explain to him that my husband was never interested, will probably never be interested, even though in our dating life, we joked that I would baptize him after he dies.
I know several women who have that arrangement with their husbands.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's just like, well, you can baptize me after I die, just in case.
Just in case.
I'm like,
that's the just in case clause. And yeah.
That's fine.
Works
I'm okay with that. Works for me. My bishop didn't really understand that my marrying him was a prayerful one.
Yeah. That...
Like, because most ladies who are in our ward and have non-member husbands are that way by other circumstances, because either they found their husbands when they walked away from church and then came back, or they ended up being married and then coming to their church and their husband didn't follow that. So he thought that I felt like my marriage was less than because my marriage was not a temple marriage. Because that's the assumption he was making about me and my marriage. So if that was what he was thinking, then I was probably thinking that, which is not the case at all.
No.
And I had to sit there and explain it and explain my story about how I never strayed from the church. I am a return missionary. This was a very thought out and prayerful thing I did. And I don't feel that my marriage is less than.
No.
At all. That was a odd experience for me. And then jump forward a couple months where my middle son has his 8-year-old baptismal interview. That was extra weird for me because the conversation, understandably, was the bishop telling my son about how he wanted to get baptized and he was underage and his family weren't members and his dad was vehemently against him getting baptized. And then he finally was able to get baptized. Those same assumptions were made about my family and how my husband felt, which is not the case at all.
No.
Like, the problem is with most of the men that I came across in our ward is they're not asking how I feel.
Right.
They're not asking questions. They are making assumptions on their own feelings and projecting that on me.
From their own experience.
From their own experiences. Yes, exactly. The other thing that was felt a little off to me was my bishop was talking to my son and comparing the celestial kingdom to a basketball game and how he went to a basketball game as a kid and they had scalpers outside selling tickets that were fake, and then he had real tickets. The baptism that my son was getting was the real ticket.
Okay.
Versus the scalper ticket that were fake. Meaning that the rest of the churches and baptisms were the scalper tickets and weren't going to allow him to get in. This really caused problems with me because, hello, my husband can't get in to the basketball game. How does that make my kid feel? I'm trying to protect my kid against people saying that daddy is bad or wrong because he's not a member. And this was just not thought through very well. Thankfully, Red didn't seem to pick up on it right away, so that was like a whew.
Yeah.
But the kid's smart. We've had other issues later on in the future with other instances where he picked up quick. And then the other thing that was a kind of a weirdness was he made a really big deal about my brother Alan and Alan's priesthood and how Alan was going to come out and perform the baptism and how important the priesthood was and stuff like that. And then my husband was a side note. And it wasn't even the fact that that my husband supported it. He said that my husband allowed it.
Ooh, that would have ruffled my feathers too.
Yeah, I'm
Ooh.
it's so nice that your dad is allowing you to get baptized. I'm like, no. He's there. My husband is always there to support our kids, whatever that is, whether that's a baptism, whether that's a blessing, whether that's me giving a talk, whether that's my kids up in front singing or for a ward primary program. His butt's in the seat.
Yes.
And of course my husband is always there for all the secular stuff too. Parties are parties, man.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So, that was kind of a big deal. I know the man meant well, and I was going to write this huge letter, but it seemed I don't know, somehow maybe he rethought things, and I didn't really receive that kind of a thing again.
Good.
Yeah. I feel like maybe his wife might have had the conversation with him and intervened, because I think she's a little bit more self-aware of other people, whereas he might not be.
Right. Yes.
So that's kind of my experience of really not fitting in and my background on that. And also there are other ways that people are left out in our gospel when families are concerned. I came across a couple examples within my lifetime. When I was a missionary, I served in the Georgia Atlanta North Mission, and there was a lot of people there that were very gung-ho, and there was this single mom I remember talking to, and I remember her specifically because I remember her daughter's name was Galaxy.
Wow.
And we were like, Galaxy? Really? Oh my gosh. I don't remember her name for the life of me. But I remember her daughter's name was Galaxy.
Galaxy's mom.
Galaxy's mom. Galaxy's mom had 2 kids, and she was single. And I think the missionaries before me came in and baptized her and didn't explain to her how she could be sealed in the temple to her children, and just the fact that she was able to. And so I remember having this conversation with Galaxy's mom, and her asking me, is like, I want to be sealed to my kids.
Yeah.
Like, when can I go to the temple and get sealed to my kids? That was probably one of the hardest conversations I have ever had with a new member as a missionary, because I was so pissed at the other missionaries that had baptized her because they didn't explain how it works.
Right.
You know, they just said, oh, well, you can get baptized and be with your children forever. Now, this woman was not really a very active member, so we were trying to reactivate her.
Ooh.
Yeah. And when I had to explain to her that in order to be sealed to your children, you have to be married to another man and be sealed to him for eternity, and there was no man in sight for her. I just remember her entire countenance fall.
Oh.
And it was gut-wrenching. And I was like, this woman is never coming back to church.
I wouldn't.
Yeah. No one had told her that information, and she expected that she was going to go to the temple and she was going to get sealed to her kids. And that was important to her. Having to have somebody else tell you, oh yeah, by the way, you don't qualify. I was so mad at those missionaries.
I cannot even imagine.
It was so horrible, and I didn't know what else to do. I wanted to hug the poor woman, but she didn't want me. You know, I was the bearer of bad news.
Yeah.
And so that was icky. And then on the flip side, after I came back from my mission and got married and had a family, my husband and I moved back to Georgia. Surprise! We went back to Atlanta, and in Atlanta, I had made some pretty good friends.
Yes.
The ward I was in was pretty amazing, and the people were amazing, and the ward was growing really rapidly, even though the boundaries were freaking huge.
Yeah. I lived outside of Atlanta once, and they are huge.
Yeah, it was definitely the first salt and pepper ward I'd ever been in, and it was lovely.
Sorry, I've never heard that phrase before. The salt and pepper
ward. Yeah, well, I mean, like, you go to most of these wards, and it's a bunch of salts. There's no pepper.
Okay.
I liked being a little bit of salt amongst a lot of pepper.
Oh, goodness.
It made it better.
The more spice, the better.
The more spice, the better. And these people were spicy. And so we had a lot of converts in our ward. And one of my really good friends, like in that area, had converted, I think, a few months before I had moved in. And we got really close. She had a little girl, and they both lived with her mother. And her mother were single. And her mother were converted to the gospel, and they got baptized.
Right.
And it was cool, and they had testimonies, and I just remember talking to my friend and being like, hey, why did you get baptized? Because you do know, like, your mom and you will never be sealed to each other, and you will never be sealed to your daughter if you don't marry another member man, which is probably not in the cards. And she just looked at me and she's like, yeah, but my daughter has that chance. And so I want that for her. This made me really cry.
Yeah.
Because one, there's the whole thing about, like, in the church, you're just like, how strong are you?
Right.
You know, and I'm just like, you are a flipping amazing example, you know, as to the strength of faith and what that is, you know, and that's kind of how we look at our pioneer heritage a lot of the time, is like, see, that meant a lot to those people because they sacrificed a lot.
Right.
And they were so strong. At the same time, it also makes me think, she is so strong and she is so deserving of being able to be sealed to her mom and her daughter, and it's not fair.
Right.
Why do we exclude good members from having those sealing blessings?
For this episode, I went on to LDS.org and typed in divorce and other topics like families can be together forever, but things like that. And I read some really depressing articles. Mostly, I did it in the general conference talks. And there are some really great talks out there about celestial marriage, about, what happens when your children stray. And I know our leaders are trying to be hopeful because they know we're all mucking through the trenches in this. But the one thing that I think that maybe your friend was holding on to was in this talk by Dallin H. Oakes about divorce and about how we really shouldn't. Unless there was no other option, which in my case, he talks a lot about how if two people work really hard, they can keep their marriage together, which is true. But if one stops working at it, anyway, that's not what he said. But anyway, I love the last little line in his. And this is what I think people who are not in the traditional family thing, hopefully they hear this part of the many, many talks about how families can be together forever and you have to keep your covenants and you have to save yourself for marriage and all those other kind of things.
Right.
And you pray over your children so they'll come back kind of thing, because I'm not praying over my kids that they come back.
No way.
They should not come back to the current church. But anyway, but he said this: whatever the outcome, and no matter how difficult your experience is, you have the promise, and this is what I think a lot of people are holding on to. You have the promise that you will not be denied the blessings of eternal family relationships if you love the Lord, keep his commandments, and just do the best you can. And but that's 10 minutes into a talk about how you have to shape up and you need to hold on to your marriage, And so there are little snippets in whatever they say. They quote the Bible, train up a child in the way they should go, and when they are old, they will not, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Kind of giving you, and then there's, of course, the stories in the scriptures of parents who had wayward children. Now, Adam and Eve didn't reclaim Cain, just saying.
Yeah.
So there are parts of our doctrine that do kind of give us hope, but they are so few and far between, and they don't explain how it can work in this life.
Right.
And don't get me started on family history and sealing people who are dead from a long time ago. Because if you can seal an unnamed woman to a man and have their children sealed to each other, you should be able to seal an unnamed man to be named in the future, like to be announced or like to be determined.
I love that.
To a mother who is not married to their children.
Yes.
Because if I give birth to a child, which I did 3 times, having been sealed to my husband, who I am no longer married to, those children are sealed to me. Yeah. No matter what he does. As long as I do the right thing. And I think there should be something there that we can work that would be more helpful and help those people who are in situations like that. But I digress. And as far as being divorced in the church, like I've said earlier, I really lucked out. If I had been divorced in a predominantly Mormon area, I would have had a completely different experience, I'm sure. Yeah. Especially if my husband had not been super inactive at the time and had been for 7 years. If he had been active and I was active, and then I divorced him, and then we ended up going to church, that would have made it a completely different experience for me. And I really feel for the women, and for that matter, some of the men who have to be in that situation. Right. But it reminds me of a time my mom told me about a couple in their ward. Good, outstanding family, lots of friendly kids, married in the temple, blah, blah, blah. And then one day, the bishop came into Relief Society, and he said, hello, sisters, or whatever. This couple, they are divorced. They got divorced. We are not going to be gossiping about them. That's their privacy, and if they want to share with you as individuals, they can. They are both totally worthy to hold Temple Recommend interviews. But if you see one of them or the other one or both of them dating again, you are not to judge them. They are good standing in the church. They are just no longer married to each other and are allowed as single people, single adults, to do whatever they choose. And I thought, wow. Pretty cool. And then my mom told me that 5 years later they got remarried. Now, I don't know if that was whatever, but at least they had the opportunity to be apart like they know they needed to be, and then work together because they chose to get back together later. But I love the fact that the bishop stood up and said, we are not going to, do not give them grief.
Right. No, I love that. That's like the best outcome for Bishop Roulette. Like it is that. I really think that's how things should be, Right. If we can do that. I think that's a great lead in for another example that I had that I wanted to talk about. So my parents were married for like 25 years. When I was a kid, my mom had liver problems and stuff like that. And when I left for my mission, she eventually needed a liver transplant. My mom had suspected my dad of cheating for a very long time. Right. But we could never prove anything. And she hung in there because that's what you're supposed to do, because it's her job to keep the family together.
Yeah, don't get me started on that either.
And so she hung in there. And
she gave it
she gave it
her best shot.
Best shot. She did everything she could. And eventually, when I left on my mission, my mom got a liver transplant because it got that bad. But then when I returned, we found out that my dad thought that my mom was going to die, made different plans, and that he cheated on her. Then they got a divorce. My mom felt very, very betrayed.
Obviously.
Yeah, super betrayed about the whole thing. And she went to go see what she could do to get it canceled. Like, she just got like the most vague response back about how like she wouldn't receive certain blessings if she got it canceled. They didn't say that she wouldn't be sealed to her children, which was what she was fearing. And
right.
And what I think was insinuated.
I was going to say, it kind of implied that.
Yeah, it kind of implied that. And my dad ended up marrying the lady he cheated on my mom with.
Right.
And then she was a member, and they were going to get sealed. Now, things have happened where that they can't get sealed because they aren't as active as they used to be, or at least his wife is not. But like, my mom got a letter saying that my dad was going to be sealed to this woman.
Right. Because that's what they do that.
Yeah, exactly. But the way that it works is she doesn't have any say so.
No.
And so like, it was a huge thing where it's just like, so my mom is basically threatened with having to be sealed to this man she felt betrayed by. And at this, as far as I know, towards the end of her life, really hated because of that betrayal.
Right.
But she is still forced to be sealed to this man who has since repented. And now it's just like, so she's kind of stuck with him forever. And that's not fair.
That's the way she felt.
And
that was her understanding of the temple sealing.
Yeah, that was her understanding of the temple sealing, and it just wasn't fair. And I think it's like, those types of things are things we have to deal with. And personally, I struggle with that for my mother. Yeah.
That is not the way I was raised, with that idea in mind. Mm-hmm. I was always raised with and it mentions that in some of the articles that I read, that the temple sealing only works if you both endure to the end and keep your temple covenants, and you have to be worthy to stay sealed in the hereafter. That's the way I was raised. So my mom used to say, well, if I don't make it, at least you'll be sealed to your dad, and they'll find somebody to seal him to, or you'll go up this chain. So if your dad and I aren't worthy, you can be sealed to your grandparents. And I'm just going, I don't like my grandparents that much. Okay, but the thing is it was based on your worthiness and your desire to stay married. Honestly, I've always been taught that God would not force you to stay married or be married to somebody you didn't want. The idea was, from that one quote, you won't be denied any blessings of an eternal family. And so we used to joke about, if we couldn't find somebody in this life, we'd get assigned to somebody in the last life. And I suppose our heavenly parents would pick out a good husband for me if they had to, because it kind of looks like they're going to have to. So when I hear about people going, oh, I'm sealed to an adulterer, a murderer, somebody who abused my kids, and then the bishop's going, well, you don't really need to get unsealed unless you want to get sealed to somebody else. I'm going, no, I want to get unsealed now. That makes no sense to me, because the fact that the one person went way off their covenants proves that they're not worthy to stay sealed to you anyway. As far as I'm concerned, that sealing is null and void, and the only thing that would stop you from doing is being sealed to somebody else.
Now, Jane, are you still sealed to your ex-husband?
Technically, yes.
So that makes sense why you have.
I haven't bothered, because I haven't bothered to find somebody better, and I know that he hasn't found anybody either. So, of course, he hasn't come to church since my youngest was 8, and that's over almost 20 years now. So it's been a while. So you're right. So when I got divorced, I didn't worry about that, because I knew that he wasn't planning to keep any more covenants. And at this point, as a nuanced Mormon, I'm not keeping some of them that people think of as covenants. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens next.
Those types of things make me think about, like, how righteous are the, quote, ideal families in the church?
Probably about as righteous as the rest of us.
Yeah.
The thing is we see most of these families, just unless we become friends like us. I see your family all over the place.
That's true.
But the ones that we don't see very often, we don't know what goes on.
No.
outside of the church building or
No.
the church activities. So we don't know. And yet they're held up to the ideal more so than maybe the single member families or the divorced families.
That's true. Yeah. No, I feel that way too, because I'm like, I've known people where I'm just like, or I have heard of other people who are the quote ideal family who behind closed doors are really not great people.
I have an aunt and an uncle who, when I found out how much they didn't love each other, and we're talking nasty behavior toward each other their whole entire lives, off and on. Again, married in the temple workers, until they got too old to work in the temple. I asked my mom once, ew, why do they stay married? And my mom said, well, my sister believes that if they can just put up with the crap in this life, then the Lord will change them so that they will love each other in the next life. And I just wanted to barf. It's like, no, I don't think that's how it works.
I don't think that's how
But
it
you're
works
right.
either.
Anybody who didn't understand what was going on behind the scenes in that family would not know.
Right.
Because on the outside, they were smiling and cheerful.
Yeah.
Or was that baring their teeth? I don't know. But yeah, you don't know.
Right. No, that's totally true. Because I'm like, I feel like when it comes to my own family, we are worthy. I feel like we deserve to be there, even though I don't have the temple marriage, even though my husband isn't a member. Personally, I think the fact that he's not a member makes us better people. I think it makes us a more loving, accepting family. And because there's no, us versus them rhetoric within our family. But the thing is, the us versus them doctrine inside family lines that they try and spew is super toxic.
Well, that's what my husband thought was going on in our family. I was trying very hard not to. But my kids felt some of that. Not for me, I hope. But, well, they still talk to me, so I'm guessing not. But the thing is that...
Or if so, they've at least forgiven you.
Of course, the problem with us versus them is that those of us who don't fit the mold assume that we're them and we're not us and we don't belong. And that really is upsetting. And for children in part-member marriages, they are told, you are us, but your mom or your dad are not.
Right.
And that can cause a lot of anxiety and depression and stuff with kids.
No, my kids get that all the time. Like, my kids get the fact that, daddy is not a member, so he's not good.
Yeah, he's not righteous.
He's not righteous. He's not good. You need to not be like your dad.
Whereas their dad has a lot of really good qualities that we would hope that they would emulate.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and so it's been rough. My 11-year-old has already tapped out because he sees his dad and he hears some of the things that they talk about in church. He's like, I'm not down for that. Right. And I don't want to have to sit and listen to it. Whereas my 9-year-old is able to be more nuanced and is just happy to be sitting with me in the pew. Who knows what it's going to be in a couple more years.
Yeah.
I think it's time for us to kind of wrap up here.
Yep.
So
wrap up time.
Yes. One of the things that I think that's important to remember is that in the scriptures, it says, in my Father's house, there are many mansions. Which, Jane, you've told me before that you think that just means that there's different families. There's a place for everyone, and it doesn't matter what, their family looks like.
That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah.
That makes more sense to me.
For sure. And not just the nuclear family 1950s ideal,
Right.
I see my family there, or at least I hope they are.
You're working on it.
Yeah, really. And secondly, I just want to say to everyone, thanks for playing the us versus them game, but I'm not playing anymore. And give them the nice bird.
Well, here at LDS Loudmouth, we like to end our episodes with suggestions of what people can do to make things better.
Yeah.
So, Kim, what are some suggestions?
Ideally, I would love to have everybody be really outspoken like Jane and I here. I know that's not exactly a real possibility for everyone and everyone's comfort levels, though I would like for other people to be able to stretch themselves and kind of step outside of their comfort levels, because being more outspoken is going to help everybody in the long run.
However,
I know that we do have some folks that it's really hard, especially for people who are more introverted. I'm an extrovert. Not everyone can be an extrovert like Jane and I here. An example for our introvert babes here is when you know that a message in church, whether it be over the pulpit or in class, is disparaging to someone else you know who doesn't fit the family mold, go to them right after class or after the meeting to show them you support them and talk with them about how that talk or lesson made them feel. I know it's really hard for some people out there, and I've heard a lot of stories in other places where people want to go out and reach out and they just don't. And then their friends just feel alone. And it would be really great if we could just be able to reach out and help others feel less alone.
Right.
Yeah.
I have another couple of suggestions for introverts. When you are making comments or teaching lessons, because, they make introverts teach lessons sometimes, even if they don't want to, to use inclusive language.
Oh, that's good.
In lessons or in comments, and even in conversations one-on-one with people, like after class and stuff. If you're an extrovert or feeling a little more feisty, when you hear things in lessons, you can contradict or point out the us versus them aspect of what was being talked about. You can bring up agency versus force. You can talk about Jesus and how he says to love people. Both extroverts and introverts can talk with the people who don't fit the mold. You can get to know them. You don't make assumptions. That's a big one for everybody.
Yes,
and
we just talked
also,
about that.
Yes, we did. And you can also share your experience with things that they may be going through. And we can also discuss either one-on-one or in classes the difference between doctrine and practices. And my second thing is just share your story in lessons or wherever you can so that people understand you better. So if we see somebody get shut down, you can stand up for them. You can make comments. Like I said, you can talk to them afterward. You can tell them you're on your side. Also, you can learn about the different groups of people who don't fit in. Now, for introverts and for people who love learning like I do, there are books and podcasts and stuff you can listen to learn more about. I've been reading a bunch of books. Some of the books I've read are in the process of reading. Richard Rohr's Falling Upward, which discusses first and second stages of faith and life, which is really interesting. Living on the Edge of Inside by, what's his name?
Oh.
Was it something Kimball?
Yeah. Christian Kimball?
Christian Kimball, could be. I have a bunch of books. I've got The Sacredness of Questioning Everything. I love that. I haven't gotten to that book yet. Life's Too Short to Pretend You're Not Religious. I love that. And of course, one of my favorites, not written by an LDS author, When God Had a Wife. Just because I got to plug Heavenly Mother. The podcasts that we love, we could mention some, the At Last She Said It podcast, LDS Struggles, LDS Disciple. Do you have any other good ones that you listen to?
Oh, God. I have a few, but I think those are like my main go-tos for the moment right now. I love Beyond the Block, even though they have stopped recording a long time ago. It is lovely to go back and listen to them.
They were my very first podcast.
They were, they still give me a lot of hope, even if it's like some of the newsy type stuff is fairly old. Other podcasts are really good and uplifting. I can't remember any right now, but. Yeah, those are good.
Okay. So do you have any other ideas?
Yeah, I think I agree with you in the fact with especially if you're an extrovert, if there's somebody in a lesson who's saying something that's just really not very nice or inclusive, you can go out there and you can be stop the lesson in its tracks. And correct that person of the hurtful messaging against those families in the war that don't really fit what is being taught. And I think just generally for everyone, if your family doesn't fit the nuclear family ideal, be vocal and speak up often about it to other ward members and the bishopric in public and private settings. I know it's scary, but nothing will change if we don't share our stories. Others may become less afraid and identify with you and might be less afraid to speak up because of you. Sharing our stories is how we can fight ignorance and gain empathy from others around us. Nobody should be forced to feel ashamed and pitied because their family doesn't fit the ideal mold. All families should be able to qualify for the celestial kingdom.
Can't argue with that. And if you're listening to this episode, if you have any ideas or any experiences that you'd like to share with us about helping those that don't fit the mold fit in with you, or how you have been able to fit in, please let us know in the comments. We love to hear from you.